Hello, and this is my 6 month update on everything that's been on my mind, what the group's doing, how they're getting on, any thoughts, just general. Yeah, if I haven't seen you for a while, this is kind of where my headspace is at. Um, so start with the positives. Um, I think the group's doing really well in general. Um, the group numbers are stabilized at 15 athletes across technically 4 sites. Um, they're a dedicated, hardworking bunch. I'm really proud of them. Um, they are probably harder on themselves than anyone else. I feel like 90% of my job is saying, no, that's really good. Don't, just keep going. You're doing a really good job, kind of thing. I'm more of a motivator and supporter than a taskmaster, I'd probably say. And they're starting to develop elements of autonomy. Um, I think because the sessions are following a similar kind of theme, there's that consistency. And it's not a case of, oh, it's just the same boring old thing, but they know what type of exercises, what type of things to work on. There's that routine. There's there's the odd element of games. There's the odd element of fun for sure. But they know what to expect, and the sessions just tend to go a lot smoother. Um, so yeah, no, I think they're all maturing. It's really nice actually. It's still an absolute privilege to coach this lot. Um, and yeah, um, in terms of broad headline stuff, um, one British champion, um, young Talia there with the 60-meter hurdles indoors, three national indoor champions. So from oldest to youngest, we've got Ollie in the under 17 men's heptathlon, um, massive 900 point PB, um, which is just fantastic. He did lots of PBs that weekend. The next oldest, I think, technically is Jack, Jack Ruby in the under 15 boys pentathlon. I mean, he did like a 300 point PB between September and December, going from the Kent outdoor pent to the south of England indoor pent. And then he did like another 200, 250 point PB. Was it 300 point PB? He's just massively leapfrogged. Um, just insane. Um, and so, yeah, he won the national champs there. Um, and then young Talia won the national champ. She got national championship gold medal for um, for the indoor under 15 girls pentathlon. And I think what she might have been most happy about, I can't speak for her, but I'm guessing it's because she ran a faster time in the 60 hurdles, and that extended her UK number one status, and she's sitting at the top of the indoor hurdles tree. And I, she PB'd in the shot put. She ran a great 800. Um, long jump was great. Yeah, they just every single one of them smashed it out the park that weekend. And young Evie was there doing her second ever under 15 pentathlon, and it was a national championship. And she was a first year. And now, because she did so well and jumped so well, she's now sitting third in the UK of first years. And yeah, she's just come on an absolute bunch. So yeah, she took it like an absolute champ. So well done her. Um, and national championships at whatever age are not easy. They're really not. Um, I think it's actually harder when they're younger. So there's more pressure. You've not really experienced it before. Um, but yeah, debate time. And then yeah, one South of England champion, as I mentioned before, um, with Jack Ruby. Um, and to be honest with you, if Ollie had done it, he would have won that by a country mile. And unfortunately, Talia was disqualified for a lane infringement in the 800. Otherwise, she'd have won that by a country mile. And yeah, I'm just happy that, it was upsetting at the time, and we contested it because I didn't see any lane infringement. But, if the officials saw it, then yeah, is what it is. But you know what? She didn't let that deter her. She knuckled down. She worked hard, and then she was rewarded with breaking 3,000 points by a country mile for the first time. Massive overall points PB at national champs. So, I'd rather it be that way round. I'd rather the fluff up would have been at the south of England's and she smashed it at the nationals than she smashed the south of England's and fluffed the nationals, if that makes sense. So I couldn't care less. Then everybody, moving swiftly on, everybody PB'd and or medalled at the Kent Indoor Champs. There was just so many. Some that were expected. So you've got Isabella winning the long jump. Although the score wasn't that great, one of her fouls, she jumped, her PB's 594. She did that at the individual nationals, or 593. I think it's 594. And, considering this time last year, her PB was 558. And she'd just come out of major surgery. I think she's doing fantastically, and she's just getting better all the time. At the Kents, not quite sure what happened. I think her run up was slightly off, and it was just irritating her a little bit. These things happen. Consistency is such a major thing to try and get right, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can have a load of strategies to kind of minimize that risk. But yeah. And yeah, her first jump, which although I think it was only like 480 something, she was a meter behind the board, like easily a meter behind the board, maybe a meter and a half. And I'm convinced that would have been a 6 meter jump if she'd have hit it properly. So I know deep down she can break 6, and yeah, she's in a good place. It will happen this season. I'm convinced. She just needs the opportunity to do it. Some great performances. Thomas, yeah, great 400 meter, season's best. Nearly made the final, which I think is fantastic as a first year under 17. Shot put was a PB for him. He ran a 1500, technically a PB, and I think he got a silver medal for it. Like what? That's unheard of. I don't think I've ever had a county medalist in a 1500 meter race before. So well done, dude. I can tick that one off. Normally it's the sprints, jumps, and throws, but there you go, 1500. But yeah, there was just so many. Story did a massive PB in the shot put, broke 13 meters. And he got a silver. And it was with a standing throw. There's so much potential there. And yeah, I could go on and on and on, but every single body in the group either PB'd and or medalled at the Kent Indoors. I think they're just the general vibe of the group is they're hungry. They put in a lot of good work, and now they're just super excited for the season. And yeah, they're in a great place. And so going into the summer, 11 of them are top 10 UK athletes. The average ranking of the group is 8.2, which is the best ever the group's ever been in. Everybody now is top 10, top 50, and all but 3 are top 20. Now, I say that as a metric for measuring myself. It's irrelevant for the athletes. Personally, I don't really care what your ranking is. If you've got a score of X, I would rather you just go away, put the work in, think about it, take advice or not, whatever, and then you come back and then your score is slightly better. Or your time is slightly faster, you're jumping slightly higher, throwing slightly further, jumping slightly further. I just like seeing progress. I just like seeing athletes being happy, They've got goals, they chase them, they get them, great. If they don't, they go away, regroup, and then they strategize and think about what they need to do to get it next time. I just want people progressing, having fun, being safe, all that kind of stuff. The rankings business is purely from my point of view, thinking like as a teacher, almost like it's a class. It's like a performance metric. Like how is my class getting on to similar classes across the country type thing. Um, and so I look at it and think like not only are my group improving, but they're improving at a better rate relative to other classes, if that makes sense. Like compared to their peers, everybody's going up, I'm hoping, but my athletes are increasing. They've increased more relative to other people, and so therefore they've leapfrogged some positions. It's not about coming first, coming second, coming whatever position. It's it's about doing your best, and if you've got a PB, aim for that PB. If the conditions are right and you can do it, go for it. If they're not, then the question is, should you be competing? Is it for the club? Is there some kind of other kind of duty going on, which is fine. If you're injured, please rest. I would hate it if, and my athletes know this, and I do wonder sometimes if other coaches think differently, but I 100% prioritize rest over training, especially with youngsters. I think honestly, when you and this was highlighted actually when I spoke to some of them, especially Jack and Talia. Uh, they're training 5 or 6 times a week. I'm seeing them 2 or 3 times a week, but they're just doing other things. They're doing football at a fairly high county level. They're doing other sports. They're training with other coaches. Well, Jack isn't, but they're just doing so much. I mean, it's impressive, don't get me wrong, but you keep doing that, you're going to burn out and or get injured. Like your body at that age is just not ready for that volume of work. And to be honest, I don't think it ever needs to be. It just doesn't. I agree with Dan Pfaff, who was a coach, many Olympians and whatever. Um, Pfaff, Pfaff, Dan Pfaff. I always butcher his name, but I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was something like elite performance comes from microdosing specific exercises or something like that, or specific high intensity exercises. And it's this idea of just little bursts of it, long recoveries, but highly technical, highly specific stuff. I just don't see the need for a 13, 14-year-old to be training 6 days a week. It's just nuts. And yeah, they're fine. They're okay. They're not injured now, but it's just a case of looking after them, and just making sure they can stay in the sport and they enjoy it. Couple of challenges. So one athlete, Joshua, had knee surgery in September. He is currently in year 11. So there's 2 battles really there, I think, to fight, or at least be aware of. This is coming up to 7 months now post-surgery, and he's quite a clever, studious boy, and he takes GCSEs very seriously. I just know that. I haven't seen him in a while, probably not since November, but I know that's just what he's like. He doesn't like losing, whether it's on the athletics track or whether it's in class or whatever. He always strives for his best. He's a cheeky sod, but there is a serious switch that just flips. Like he'll just go, right, I'm doing that. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's such a great competitor. And he is a force to reckon with, to be reckoned with. And so, in a nutshell, since his surgery in September, he's done all the right things. He's seen the physio with Chelsea Football Club. He's had regular month and a half, every 2-month visits with his specialist surgeon. It seems to have healed perfectly, and the physios have given him the okay for light jogging. his strength levels are now back to where they were, and he's doing 4 or 5K jogging just to kind of bit of stress relief, I'm guessing. And yeah, he says he'll rejoin sometime late March, early April. There's no rush with this. I think he'll probably return back over the Easter break, probably when pressures from school have eased up a little bit. And to be honest, I don't. There's no rush. There's literally no rush. The kid's 15, 16. Zero rush. He's got a long, long career ahead of him. He's to me, from a decathlete coach point of view, he has got a lot of good skills there that at the very worst are going to be a tiny bit rusty, but I know what his skill acquisition's like. He'll get that back in a month or two, and yeah, he's just a fantastic athlete that's only going to get better. So I'm really not worried. It's more about him coming back at his own pace, taking it easy. Um, that autonomy I was talking about, taking more ownership of their training. I just touch in base like once every couple of weeks just to check if he's all right. You know, might talk to his parents, and yeah, no, he's fine. But I still strongly believe that special attention is going to be needed while he's recovering. That's just going to happen. That's just going to be what's needed. And then the other challenge I faced over this time is pole vault opportunities. Now, I grew up in southeast London, Orpington, Pettswood, that kind of area, and I'm now living in Dartford for the last 10 years or so. And in the southeast, really, indoor pole vault areas, uh, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only really a few options. There's Sutton Arena, Carshalton, and I haven't been there in years, but I know from an article that John Shepherd posted is that they've been charging to use the areas. So the pole vault area, they've been charging per lane indoors, on top of the entry fee to get there. And also Sutton, driving across the suburbs of South London, that's just a pig of a journey. I would rather the same distance but motorway traffic, or maybe double the distance, to be perfectly honest with you. So they charge a lot per area, and the journey is a bit of a nightmare. And if it's a nightmare for me, it's going to be a nightmare for the athletes that travel from the other side of Kent. So yeah, that's just a pain. Crystal Palace is still being renovated? Question marks. I'm not really sure. I haven't been there in a while. I've kind of been reading that there's been a renovation work going on to some degree. I'll need to check that out at some point, but that's been no go. Lee Valley, great facilities, don't get me wrong, but it's always been busy. The drive to get there, because we have to go over the Dartford Bridge and back through the tunnel, is an absolute pig. If there's been some kind of traffic or accident, I could leave school at 4 o'clock. I could leave school at 3:30. I could pick up, or we could get stuck at the Dartford toll for hours, literally hours, and I would struggle to get there for 6 o'clock, maybe even 6:30, 7. And then you've got to think, well, we need to finish by 7:30, 8, because these kids have got school the next day, and if we leave now, they're still not going to get back to about 10 o'clock at night. It's just not fair. And then at the weekends, it's almost a no-go, because every weekend there's some kind of competition, like some kind of open or South of England or county. Yeah, there's just something going on. And so Lee Valley, great place, but it's just not feasible. And so the option I've kind of been left with is we trek to Brunel University, West London, and we just suck it up. And it's not been ideal because, well, if I look at it from Ollie's perspective, he will leave his house at 8:30. He'll get the train. He will get to Ebbsfleet International for 10 o'clock because he lives the other side of Kent. I'll pick him up. We'll then drive to Norman Park, which will take a solid hour to pick the poles up. So it's now 11. We'll put the poles on, have a little toilet break because we're going to be driving for another 2 hours to get to Brunel because just traffic, just Saturday morning traffic. It's a pig. So yeah, we arrive at Brunel at 1 o'clock. We'll train for a couple of hours until like 3:30. The reason we don't go to Brunel in the morning is one, Ollie's trains and they just wouldn't be running that early in order to get there on time. Two, Norman Park wouldn't be that early, wouldn't open that early to pick the poles up. And three, in the morning, Brunel is pretty packed with all the university sprinters and all that other rubbish. So 1 o'clock to 3:30 when I went there last time was like a golden hour. There's just no one there. Golden couple of hours anyway. And then we finish at 3:30, and then Ollie will get the train back at 5:30, and then he won't be home to about 6, 6:30, 6:45. And so this kid has been out of the house for 11 hours, traveling most of the time and training for 2 hours. And it's just like, is this the best the UK can do? Like, is there not a cheeky little hangar or a sports hall that's got a pole vault bed that's just in like the Kent area or the East Sussex Kent border? It's just disgusting. It really is. There should really be an indoor pole vault area in every county, and there just isn't in Kent. As far as I'm aware, there are no indoor pole vault facilities in Kent. It's as simple as that. It's just so unbelievably unacceptable. There should be, at the very least, an indoor pole vault facility in every county, as far as I'm concerned. You don't have to spend millions. You just need, it doesn't have to be a full-blown 200-meter track. It really, really doesn't. It just needs to have a pole vault bed that you could probably double up and have a high jump run up to the side and maybe a long jump pit, just pole vault. It's just pole vault. Pole vault and high jump is an absolute pig to do outdoors in the cold because most clubs won't allow you to get the pole vault bed out because it's wet and it will damage the mat, and those things are tens of thousands of pounds, if not, in the 40s, 50,000s of pounds. It's not going to work. But luckily, it's now turning into the summer. We're vaulting outdoors. And to be honest with you, if you'd taken that heptathlon, that indoor heptathlon with Ollie, his best 6 events did not include the pole vault. If you took pole vault out of that heptathlon, so made it a 6 event, Ollie would have won that by a landslide. But he came second because his pole vault is underdeveloped. Now, I'm not too worried about it because as long as he's jumping well by he hits seniors, it doesn't matter. It just means he's slightly on the back foot while developing. And to me, as long as it's being worked in the background, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It just doesn't. The only thing it matters for is if you want to push like, oh, come on, we need to do under 18 worlds, under 20 worlds, that kind of thing. And to be honest, we can dream, but it's senior success, doing well at the end is what matters. And he gets that. It's being worked on. We know it's a seasonal thing. And to be honest, this time last year, I had no idea if he was going to stay in the sport because of his back issues. And so now we can do pole vault and I don't have to worry about his back caving in or something. I'm grateful for as it is. And yeah, pole vault is only going to get better for him just because he's a great athlete. So I'm not really that fussed. All he needs is just opportunities. And the same with all the other athletes. They just need more experience. For the Canterbury lot, I am probably going to be going to Folkestone on a Wednesdays during the summer and pole vaulting there because as far as I'm aware, the pole vault bed at Canterbury isn't usable. So that means the Canterbury lot and the Norman Park lot are going to be getting at least two pole vault sessions a week, which I think is more than enough for a developing athlete. In other news, filmed the first inaugural athletics address with Frank Dick. Great guy. I'd met him once as a kid. When I mean a kid, literally like 14, 15 years old, um, at Blackheath and Bromley President's Club dinner. Um, hasn't changed, perfectly honest with you. He told the story of the little girls like, oh, Mr. Dick, I only, and she ran 100 meters in 19 seconds, and she was, defining winning in the sense that it's being better today, every day, that kind of stuff. I heard that story as a kid. I heard it again. He hasn't changed. But I still found what he said absolutely captivating. I recorded it and put it on my YouTube channel. I agree with everything he says. For the record, there's not a thing I would change. The sport does need to be professionalized. That doesn't mean it's all about money, but it's in the sense that there's everybody being volunteers is, well, it's just not good enough. Volunteers are useful, don't get me wrong, but the fact that you can have professional development, say, you can, you can go on courses, you can learn from other people, you can get qualifications, like all these things. Just for park money for a second. The fact that you can work in teams, organizations, there can be like a county level professional development. There can be a regional, like a South of England or Midlands or North of England professional development. There can be in England athletics. There can be a UKA. There can be different hierarchical structures that support each other from the top down and, feed back from the bottom up. There's just a whole range of this team of teams where everybody is important, and they just need to work together. Not that they're not working together, but I feel like it could be more cohesive. At the moment, what I feel I'm doing or providing is very maverick. Like, I'm having to sort things out. I'm having to negotiate with Blackheath, with Invicta, with Dartford Harriers. I'm having to, like, it's little bits here and there. I helped out last summer with the Dartford Summer of Sport with Dartford Harriers. I helped out the other weekend with Blackheath doing the under 13 field events development day on the Sunday. I feel I helped out with Invicta doing other things like, oh yeah, that's the other thing. I was a marshal for their Canterbury 10 mile, and that was great fun, even though freezing cold. So I'll pack a better coat for next time. There's just lots of little things, and I know I'm working with lots of different clubs, and that's a unique situation. But there's no cohesiveness. There's no, like, for example, I could have been a county representative that fulfills this kind of role, and I could have been subcontracted out to a few clubs, or a couple of clubs could look up on a register and see, like, oh, Alex is providing this kind of service. Why don't we get in contact and see if he can help, kind of thing. And then, it's just little things like that. I definitely feel athletics, there's so many screws to tighten. It's nowhere near the finished product, and I still feel that people that vehemently say, "Oh, it needs to be a volunteer thing, greater good," that's fine, but the problem is the admin to sort that out can't come from volunteers, because it hasn't and it won't. It's a full-time job. Um, it's it's demanding, and people have lives, people have mortgages, people have rent, people have bills to pay, and you just to deal with that kind of admin, you need full-time members of staff. And in a sense, that is professional. So to me, the door has already been open on that one. If the rest of England athletics became entirely amateur and volunteer work, I don't think we'd get anything done. I submitted my coaching license to be renewed, and it took up until, well, it took my license. Well, we'll talk about it in a second. Do my license, because that will come up in a bit. There's just so many other news to to talk about. I got Kent County Athletics Coach of the Year for 2024. Wow, just didn't expect that at all. Um, I know there's some great work going on in Kent, um, and a shout out really to the man that helped me when I was training to be a coach, Nigel Stickings. I think he's doing great work. I think his group is really positive. They seem to really look out for each other. Even when he's not there, he's developed a culture of them getting on with work. Um, it's just so nice, to be honest with you, to see a sprint group. Now, I've seen a lot of sprint groups, and my biggest bugbear with sprint groups is I watch them, not all the time, but I watch them, and I see these sprint groups that spend about 90% of the time laying on mats, doing mobility stretching, having a little chat, all this kind of rubbish. And it's just like, do that at home. You could have done all that stretching at home, and then you can come to the track and do the proper stuff. Like, this is a waste of time. And I don't think they're getting better, to be perfectly honest with you. And when I see Nigel's group, they do a bit of that, but they're on to running. They're on to doing work. I see them doing work. Results are paying off. To me, like, I just see lots of good stuff happening, and it just seems to be such a positive environment. And his group's gotten a lot larger. So talented. I mean, I'm the Kent under-20 and senior team manager for the inter-counties, and he's got some really good under-20 and senior talent that I used to pick for the sprints for the inter-counties. They're great athletes. Yeah, and when they rang out a list of coaches that were also in the running, and I knew from the description one of them was Nigel. I mean, Sam got 2 Olympic bronze medals in the relay. Like, he's had a fairy tale of a season, going from potentially injured this time last year with having a hamstring niggle coming off the back of that, to just about, and forgive me if I've got the details wrong, but going to the nationals, just missing out on qualifying for the Olympic relay team, then going to, and I think he didn't quite get it because there was like a niggle or something, then going away, sorting that out, and then very last minute he did a Diamond League and ran an absolutely smashing PB. And then because somebody else got injured, he got slotted into the team, and then the rest is history. He ran his socks off. I think he was one of the best runners in the relay team, and yeah, rightly so, got some Olympic medals for it. He's had a real Cinderella story, transformational year for him, and I don't think a small part of that is because of Nigel. I think Nigel and the way he is, as Nigel has definitely realised a lot of that for Sam. So yeah, no, just very humbling. I enjoyed the evening, got to chat to some Blackheath Harriers like Daniel and other people that, yeah, I just hadn't seen for such a long time. So it was a really great evening. But yeah, Blackheath were very successful that night. In terms of the combined event steering group that I've been a part of, thanks to Rafa for inviting me there. I'm happy to say that even though we butt heads and, we not disagree, but I definitely feel that my opinion is in stark contrast to some of the others. Classic example is most recently with the under-16 boys national championship format. I wanted to push for a decathlon, and the reason for that was because if I think about really talented athletes like Ollie, and suppose they wanted to go for the European under-18s or an under-18 decathlon international, if they were top year under-16, which is bottom year under-17, they would have been doing a decathlon already, for starters, so they'd be ready for it. And 2, if you had it so under-16 was an octathlon and under-18 was a decathlon, then that qualifying year would be the first time they've done a decathlon. Whereas Ollie is in a position where he's had 2 years under-17 doing decathlons, and now this will be his 3rd year in 2026 doing decathlons, and he'll have had 4 decathlons practice ready for this. Like, I just can't think of a better smooth run up for it. And my suggestion for under 16 decathlon was, it's all the appropriate hurdle stuff, 100-meter hurdles, 1.5k discus, 5k shot, 700-gram javelin. But instead of the 400, you lower it down to a 300, and instead of a 1500, you lower it down to a 1k. So it's still 10 events, but you just lower it so it's just more appropriate for under 16s. And to be fair, that sounded reasonable in my head, and I think it paves the way for long-term development, especially when I look at some club records in some of the clubs. There are still under 15 decathlon records. I know there's one at Blackheath. I know it. It's Jamie Quarry, and he scored nearly 6,000 points as an under 15, which is just insane. I know there are some records from the 80s and 90s at some clubs for under 15 decathlon. Historically, as a nation, we've been able to deal with it, but it just fell in deaf ears. They were not having it, this group. They wanted an under 16 octathlon, and they pointed to other nations and all this other stuff. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't care what other nations are doing. That's their problem. And also, from a logical point of view, if you want to surpass other nations, you're going to have to do something particularly a bit different. Or you get very lucky and you have exceptional talent, and they were going to do the best anyway, regardless of what you do. But if you follow everybody else, you're going to get similar results to everybody else. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'd rather the UK has the best results in decathlon. And we'll talk about that in a sec. But it's fantastic, the steering group. It's nice to chat to them. It's, I might butt heads, and that's probably just me being a grumpy maths teacher, but it is honestly good to see them. And I value their input, more importantly. It's just nice to chat, and I do listen. Doesn't mean I agree, but I 100% listen, and I do think about it. And sometimes I think like, oh, maybe I was a bit hasty there. But the under 16 decathlon is definitely something that I feel should have been pushed forward. And I think an under 16 octathlon is too wimpy, personally. It's a step back for the sport. But never mind, it is what it is. And finally, Bryden's film on mental health and other issues is going to premiere in July, which I'm really happy for. He's talked to me about it every step of the way. He's generating real buzz. He's got the London Mayor's office on it. He's got a few other celebrities there. I wish him the best for it. I'm hoping it has the biggest impact possible. I know he's put his heart and soul into this project. I'm really proud of him for doing it. It's the trailer is already out. Check out his Instagram or ask him for a trailer. He's already doing promotional stuff for it. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. It's going to be a great event. Renewed my license for another 3 years. That was a pickle. Put in the renewal process late October. The DBS took a whole 6 weeks to clear, and that's because I paid extra for the enhanced DBS, and I was told that would take between 4 to 6 weeks. And lo and behold, dead on the 6 weeks deadline, it just suddenly went broop, and it just completely, because you see a status update and you can see at what point it's doing what. Anyway, that went through, and it was only until last week where, if you can see on there, it says highest qualification event group coach. It said no license. And I'd been ringing England Athletics for absolutely ages, saying like, where's my license? Everything's clicked. There's 5 progress bits you have to tick off, like having an up-to-date photo, DBS, training, safeguarding. I can't remember all the 5 bits. They're there on the website. But the point is, I had all my 5 ticked off. I rang up. I gave them my URN. I was like, yeah, what's the deal? And I rang up every week, and they were just like, oh, don't worry. And in the end, they had to email Blackheath and say, yeah, this is the status, no further action needed, it's being sorted. So yeah, it's there. I'm qualified. It's just a bit of a faff. This is this kind of thing. Like, these are professional people. These are salaried people. They're doing a job. I don't know whether it's part-time or full-time, but imagine if this process was run by volunteers and they just did it like once a month kind of thing. Oh, geez, we would be here absolutely forever. So I think, if anything, it needs to be more professionalized. There needs to be more teams, more people at this, better service. I just don't see how making this a volunteer thing will make it better, personally, across all dimensions of the sport. Bryden's nearly completed his athletics coaching license. The macro cycle's done, just needs to be ticked off, and then he can submit his videos, and he's done. Again, it's an absolute slog. I've helped him with that. Yeah, coaches and officials. We're desperately needing both. Any of the athletes, I'm always saying like, yeah, you should be an official, or yeah, you should just be a coach and/or a coach. Yeah, give back to the sport. It's so necessary. Um, so thoughts going into the year. So at the indoor combined events, Talia lost to a Scottish person, but won the national champs for the combined events. Ollie won the nationals, but he came second in the UK, lost to a Scottish, and Jack won the national champs, but lost to a boy in Guernsey. So although they won gold medals across their 3 combined events, they all came second in the overall UK competitions. And I was thinking to myself, 3 golds out of 4. Has that ever happened before? I've never really thought about it. So an hour or so later, I'd compiled a list of athletes that got bronze, silver, and gold at the national level for indoor, outdoor, under 15, under 17, and the under 20 senior combined events champs. So what I found really interesting is that across 62 championships, and prior to 2008 and 2007 and back, it was called the 3As, the Amateur Athletics Association. So I'm only considering EA champs. One, because EA champs, and I think the 3As wouldn't have distinguished between English and UK. And two, it becomes a bit harder to find details of coaches. Athletes, yes, but coaches a bit harder, because Para 10 doesn't go back that far, and GB Athletics only just has the list of athletes, and I have to go on Wikipedia pages, and if they're not good enough, they haven't got a Wikipedia page, and it becomes really difficult. And yeah, and also you're going back quite a few years, and I thought, well, I just want a snapshot of the last 20 years or so, because it's very unlikely if you're a decathlon coach 30, 40 years ago that you're still in the game. Maybe I'm wrong, but even if you're in your 20s 40 years ago, you're going to be in your 60s now. It's just an age thing. I just wanted like a 20-year snapshot. And so over 62 championships, that's 248 competitions, indoor, outdoors, and the age groups. That's 744 medalists. They are attributed to 86 coaches. Okay. And I compiled a bunch of group information into a table so I could rank it, did a few stats. And yeah, since 2007, no coach has won 3 golds at single championships for combined events. Just end. There's been a couple of coaches that have won 3 golds spread out across the year. So looking at indoors youngsters, indoors olders, outdoor youngsters, outdoor olders. So there's 4 combined events champs, indoors, outdoors, and then doubled up because of the different age groups. There's some coaches that have got 3, but none have got 4. 3 golds in 1 championship is ridiculous, and I'm very proud they managed to do that. What I found very interesting is you can also look up the coaching status. So you can actually look up what their licenses are saying, and that was at the front of my mind because, well, I just renewed my license and the absolute pig of trying to sort that out. And of those coaches that got medals, 44% of them are still coaching at least one combined event athlete that is still competing. So 56% of those coaches that got medals at these champs don't coach combined event athletes anymore. That could be because they were never combined event coaches and they were just a lead coach on somebody who was a combined eventer, and they might have joined a long jump group or something. Don't know. I didn't really look into it. But already it's starting to paint a bad picture. 63% of those talented coaches still have their license. So already in 20 years, you're looking at just over a third of those coaches go, nope, stopped, not doing anymore, not coaching, which is is that a fair dropout? I don't know. And then I think the bigger picture of why decathlon is struggling is 19% have the insurance to coach pole vault and discus necessary for decathlon. So it's almost 1 in 5. So just under 1 in 5 coaches actually have the qualifications / insurance necessary to coach a decathlete. Otherwise, it's team coaching. And that is a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. So 20% of all the coaches have a discus, so the throws coach qualification. 32 have the jumps, which allows them to do pole vault. But only 9, which is 10.5%. So just over 10% of all those coaches are not only decathlon level ready coaching, but they're still coaching combined event athletes. So only 9 out of 86. That's such a drop off. And yet 16 of them either aren't operating within the spec of their license. And I'd need further analysis of that, because what it says on the My Athletics coach license checker isn't the be all and end all, but a lot of them are coaching decathletes now and they don't have the necessary license for it. I'm not saying they should be in trouble or anything, but the point is there are a lot of coaches that are operating outside of the parameters of what they're insured to do. And to me, that could potentially lead to pitfalls. And sadly, this is 2/3 of all coaches of decathletes right now. 44 out of 72 decathletes are in these groups, and that's 61%. So 2/3 of the coaches of decathletes fall into this. The current coaches, sorry, and 44 out of 72 decathletes are in these groups. It's just not good enough. You know, I don't understand how you can have a group of decathletes and as a coach, you don't want to be qualified and a little bit tooled up on how to coach decathlon. I don't think it's an arrogance thing. I think it's there hasn't been a combined events elective. Combined events, well, put it this way, the first thing I asked on my level 2 or my athletics coach license day when I got there is like, I want to coach combined events. What do you suggest is the optimum pathway to be a combined events coach? And they said, well, you're going to need, from an insurance point of view, the athletics jumps to do pole vault, and you're going to need the athletics throws to be insured to do discus, because the athletics throws insures you for the heavy throws, like the cage throws essentially, the discus and javelin. The athletics jumps qualifies you for the triple jump and for pole vault. Even if you don't use triple jump and hammer, that will still qualify you for the decathlon. And then we suggest really you become an event group in all of it so that you're fully qualified. And that's exactly what I did. Now, I think event group at all of them is a bit excessive. At the very least, you need athletics coach in jumps and athletics coach in throws to ensure you. But yeah, it just needs to happen. Yeah, and so that Venn diagram will explain, hopefully, what's going on. So, you know, it's a bit woeful, really. It's one part of the puzzle why I think as a country we struggle with 8,000 point decathletes, is coach education is just not there. And the steering group is finalizing a combined events coaching elective. I think that's one step forward. And the other step forward is this willingness to learn and willingness to go, well, actually, I need to learn some more about this and put my training in. And that comes from professionalism. That comes from going, well, hold on a minute. I'm a professional. I need continuous professional development, CPD, and it's part about being a coach is continually progressing and improving, and I do it all the time. If there was another coaching qualification up for grabs, I'd be on it. As far as I'm concerned, I've maxed out in the England Athletics one, but it still doesn't stop me reading. Still doesn't stop me talking to other coaches. It doesn't stop me from actually contributing for doing England Athletics Combined Events Talent Days, which that's another piece of news. I've signed a little contract to be a Combined Events consultant, and I've been working with Rafa and the team, and Ashley Bryant and Alex Wharton and Jess Taylor Jemmett, and thanks to Darren Ritchie for sorting that out and leading on that. Just yeah, lots of great days helping athletes, and that's part of the sport. That's what it's all about. The UK group analysis from all this, the average rank of the group is the highest, 8.2, or lowest, highest rank, lowest number. And there are some absolutely fantastic coaches there. The average rank of combined event athletes in the group, mine's 8.6. And that's where other coaches start to come up in it a little bit. And what that's an indicator of is that they have a lot of athletes they coach that aren't combined eventers, whereas my group is predominantly, if not all, combined eventers, and their best rank is in combined events, so it's very similar. So 8.6 is good for an average rank of the group, but in terms of combined events, Ashley is leading the way with 3.7, I believe. Very well. He's got some fantastic athletes, and it's not surprising. Number of athletes with combined event rank. Yeah, I've just got a ton of them. I've just got 11 out of the 15, 16, what at 15. So 11 out of 15 are doing combined events and have a rank. Just insane. There's some that will never have a rank. For example, I coach Bryden, that he is a thrower. He's not going to start suddenly doing combined events. There are some that are so young that they haven't been able to do a combined events yet, or they're still working on it, and that's absolutely fine. So yeah, 11 out of 15 is great. Decathletes, combined event athletes that you're coaching, I've got the second highest. I've got 8 that are training for decathlon. Alex has got 9. Great setup, what he's doing up there in Manchester. Always enjoy talking to him. Always got time to hear what he has to say. And then percentages of the group that are decathletes, nearly 60%, nearly 3/5 of my group are decathletes, just over half, not quite 60%, which is by far and away the heaviest percentage, which is insane, because when I first started coaching, I think I only had Josh and the rest of them were girls. And now it's kind of swung to about even. I'd say tipping towards decathletes, but yeah. And then when I look at the UK group analysis, so if a score of -50 towards the bottom green, it means they've only ever had golds with females. And if it's red, 50%, they've only had golds with males. So I'm kind of sitting at a 30% swing towards males. It's not quite 50% because I've had Talia, but I'm keen to work with more youngsters, more young women that want to do well in combined events. And yeah, it's just who walks through my door, really. But interestingly, the vast majority of coaches tend to pick a lane. They'll either coach women or they'll coach men, and that's it. Or rather, they've only had success with one gender. And again, I think that's possibly a strong point to bring up in a combined events coaching module, is that there is a difference, clearly, not only in just the number of events and the type of events, but there is a difference between coaching a young lady and coaching a young man. Simple as that, and the evidence shows it. There is clearly a swing. Yeah, and then if you look at medals, swing from female to males, and then you ranked them in total medals and total golds. That's the table on the right. If we look at the swing from youngsters to seniors, so medals in the younger categories versus the older categories, The minus 50% towards the bottom means they only had gold medals with the youngsters, and red, the more red it is, the more golds they've had in the seniors. I have yet to have under 20 or a senior medal because my athletes haven't been old enough yet. I've brought them up from under 13 and now they're starting to get to under 17. I've been working from the ground up, so I've not had the opportunity to, but I really, really, really look forward to it because, oh, yeah, it's dynamite stuff. It's more spread out than when it was filtered by gender, but there are definite trends. And again, coaches tend to have success in one or the other. And again, this is another potential area that you can say, well, hold on a minute. Should we be looking at the differences of coaching a young combined events athlete, looking at where they are on the UKA athlete development model? How does coaching combined events change with age? There's clearly success stories for older ones and younger ones. It could be, I think, sadly, there is no legacy training. Rather, it just seems to me when I look at some of these athletes that they train with a coach, a local area, whatever, and then when they get to university, when they're top under 20 senior, it's perfectly acceptable to bugger off to uni, and they'll go to university where there's an established coach. They may not cut all ties, but from a power of 10 perspective, it looks like they do. They change lead coaches. They might get a slew of other coaches as well. It'll be this, oh, welcome to the fold. You know, you're part of University X now. And yeah, just very, very interesting that you have quote unquote really good coaches that are at these high performance centers and they don't seem to coach any youngsters. Not officially. Maybe they do have outreach programs, but yeah. And to be honest, I think these excellent coaches should coach youngsters. And I think just waiting for them to be this magically semi-finished product where all they have to do is enhance it a little bit, I think is a bit disingenuous in terms of, oh, look how successful I'm a coach, because there is a lot of formative and forming processes going on when they're young. And I honestly think that if you can get that 9, 10 up to 19, 20, those 10 years right, and that's usually at school, then you have set up a fantastic athlete into seniors. And that's kind of what it's about. It's not about working them too hard. It's not about volume. It's about skills. It's about skills, having a healthy attitude to sport, making sure they're at universities and they don't have any disorders like bulimia or, you know, body image dysmorphia stuff. They're just nice, healthy, happy, competitive athletes that enjoy the sport and they just love it. And yeah, I feel like, and vice versa, I think some coaches that spend too long with the youngsters need to actually go, well, hold on a minute, I want to take you through. And they might possibly be lumbered with youth academies and they don't have the flexibility to say, well, actually, I want to take this cohort through to seniors. You know what, I'm just spitballing here, but the data does suggest there seems to be a very definitive, you are with this person now. Now move on, you're with a different person now. And there definitely does seem to be a split between the youngsters and elder ones. It's very rare that a coach takes an athlete through and they get medals under 15, under 17s, and then that athlete has the same coach but still winning medals under 20s, under seniors. Not under seniors, just seniors. And then when you look at indoors versus outdoors, where negative 50 means gold indoors and positive 50, the red at the top, means only outdoors, that is even more spread out. It's, you know, it's very unlikely that coaches only have success just indoors or just outdoors. Interestingly, I have no access to indoors, but lean more towards indoor success. Is that possibly due to athletes missing seasons? Or is it because they have poor discus javelin 400 meter scores? Now, I know my athletes are strong in discus, javelin, and 400. I think it's because indoor competitions tend to be quite far away, and people just want to get into training, and they don't want to spend, at least £100 on petrol, a couple of £100 on hotel rooms, all the other stuff. Like, oh my God, when I was in Sheffield, my hotel was in like this clean air gas zone. And so for the 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I had to pay £17 a day. Even though my car is ULEZ compliant, that's like another 50 quid just for the luxury of driving from my hotel to the EIS in Sheffield. 50 quid just for that. I think some people, they probably would succeed massively indoors, but they just go, nah, economically, just not worth it. Um, Especially when there's no follow on. If there was a little international follow on like they do with the under 20s or seniors, absolutely. But you're just going there for a gold medal and a teddy. Some kids really love that. Some parents would just be like, you got one last year. Don't know if it's worth 400-500 quid for the weekend. Or maybe just the distance, just the distance. My athletes are super keen, but trying to convince them that they need to travel all the way from the darkest points of Kent up to Sheffield, where that's like a 5.5 hour drive, it's a mission. It really is. Um, so yeah, total golds across all combined events champs, where I've filtered out everyone that's got less than 3 golds. There is obvious ties to coaches that have had access to indoor and university training grounds. Ian Grant, Brunel, Tony Minicello, up in Sheffield, Eldon Lake, Brunel, Mike Dyer, out in Reading, but just a quick drive up to Brunel. There's just so many. And I look at them and think, like, I do not have an immediate access to this. So yeah, it's just a bit of a toughie. But yeah, it's no surprising when I look at that group of coaches, like, yeah, they've had some great athletes over the years. There's no surprises here. Gold medals per championship and medals per championship stats. There's been a lot of one-hit wonders. And if you take out those that have got 2 or less gold medals, then yeah, you've only got that list. And at the moment, I'm averaging 1.25 gold medals per championships I've gone to, and I'm averaging 2 medals per championships, which is insane as far as I'm concerned. Just insane. It's the highest gold medals per championship, and it's one of the highest medals per champs. Just insane. I still don't quite understand how this lot have done it. I'm proud of them. I don't think they've realised what they've done either. It still hits me. But what's really interesting, I find, is that no coach has had a gold medal in an indoors, outdoors, male and female, age group, and under 20 senior champs. There's always been one that they've been missing. And if you look at the coaching, education, and development, which is non-existent for combined events, and so you look at you look at coaches that have had gold medals indoors and outdoors, and have had gold medals between males and females, and that are qualified to coach decathlon, then there's only 2. There's only 2. There's myself and Julie Dodot. That's it. And out of 86, just 2 have got a proven track record of males and females and indoors and outdoors. And to be honest with you, when you put the swing for juniors versus seniors, that becomes 0. Because Julie has had success only with the seniors, it looks like. Although I'm sure she'd say, oh, well, I've had great juniors as well. It's like, that's fine. But from an England athletics champs point of view, I can only find gold medals for under 20s and seniors. And for me, because my group are so young and this is the 3rd year in the game. I've been in athletics for a long time, but coaching, this is my 3rd year. They've just been youngsters. It's no fault on them, but they've just got the youth medals, the under 15, under 17. So if we filter out people that have had at least, medals in both youngsters and olders, then yeah, there's nobody. There's nobody. So a proven track record, indoor and outdoor, youngsters and olders, female and male, there's no coach. There's just none. And that needs to change. It really, really does. And this is 15, 18 years, nearly 20 years of England athletics champs data. Indoors, outdoors, youngers and olders, females and males. And yeah, my plea is this massively needs to change. This isn't new, but looking at some stats, decathlete coaches need to come forward or need to be trained, because if we compare the women, most notably last year's Katarina Johnson-Thompson with her score second best in the world, the UK best in pentathlete appears to be at the moment Jade O'Dowda, and she's broken that score and gone even higher, fourth in the world now, versus our best indoor heptathlete that's 18th in the world, and they'd need to score 7% more points, which isn't that much, to be the equivalent fourth, same as the women. And the UK best decathlete, which is the same guy, he's 54th in the world. 54th. And they'd need a 10.4% jump in points in order to get the equivalent second. It's just insane. Like, I don't understand how you can think that combined events as a whole is going well in this country when there is such a disparity between top-end decathletes and top-end heptathletes. A couple of points on there, I'm not going to read through them all, but essentially the heptathlon would be even higher ranked if KGT was fit, motivated, etc. You know, she'd be breaking 5,000 points, especially in her heyday of 2019, 2018. The UK's current best decathletes are based in the US now. 3 of the top 5 decathletes are as well. 3 of the top 5 are, and 3 of the top 4 heptathletes. So 3 of the top 5 decathletes and 3 of the top 4 heptathletes. So it's those same 3. And they've clearly taken a preference to heptathlon because they're scoring better. It appears to me that discus, javelin, 400 are not as competitive at the international level because their rankings in the decathlon is so much worse than heptathlon. Or it could be that nobody competes heptathlon that much, which I think is a bit of an understatement considering it's got a very strong following in Europe. And there's a lot of good heptathletes and decathletes going on in Europe. But what was interesting is there was a lot of slating in the combined events steering group of the 400 meters. Like, oh, if you're fast enough, you can just work on the 400 later. And in actual fact, 400 meter is a sprint. Its coefficient in the formula table is pretty high. So that means if you improve in it, you're going to be rewarded better than events, say, javelin or shot put for every percentage increase in performance. And to be perfectly honest with you, apart from you've got to be careful doing lactic training with athletes who are a bit too young, it's a good event to get good at, and you need to work at it. It's not an event you can just ignore. Well, none of them are. You've got to do well in all 10 events, but I just found it really interesting statistically that discus, javelin, 400 seems to be the events that potentially what lets us down. Is there a problem? Absolutely. Look at the last 25 years. The best British heptathletes are about 2.6% off of being the best in the world, whereas the men's decathletes are nearly 11%, which is about 4 and a bit times worse. The top graph is where the best women are in blue and the best British heptathletes are in red. It's fairly close. And then you can see in the graph below for decathlons, you had a little spout in the early 2000s with Dean Macy getting silvers and bronzes. Yeah, and otherwise it's just a big gap. 7 of the last 26 Olympic, world and heptathlons have resulted in British golds from 3 athletes. 7. With many more silver and bronze medals going on, whereas absolutely 0 of the 26 decathlons. Best performances have been the silver medal in the 1999 Worlds in the last 25, 26 years. And this century, it was the bronze in 2001 for the world champs. Both of those, Dean Macy. No Olympic, world or European medals since for you decathletes have ever been won, any medal, at any age group. So under 18, under 20, under 23, seniors, none. Whereas if you look at the women, they've had 20 medals, 12 golds, 2 silvers and 6 bronzes. It's just mental. You can't tell me that decathlon is in a good state. You can't tell me that. I think we've got a couple of Commonwealth medals, but if you look at area, European, World, and Olympic, we're completely at sea. Completely at sea. If you type UK decathlon athletics, because if you type UK decathlon, you get the store, you get a couple of articles, and one of the first articles is this one, 2023, a couple of years ago. Harry Kendall saying heptathlons and decathletes are being sidelined, combined events, and that British decathletes get no respect. Until a couple of weeks ago, we had no idea what was going on, said Kendall. We're getting no information. Essentially, the UK championships were a bit botched. They don't even have the decathlon with the UK championships. They have it's a separate thing. That's probably a timetabling thing. I totally get it, but still a bit whiffy. And then they said we get no respect. There's a narrative going on that we don't have the quality at the moment in combined events to warrant enough exposure. I actually think, he said, especially this year, it's pretty false. In the decathlon, we've got a fair few people around the 7,500 points. There's a load of boys out in America, as we talked about before, doing really good jobs at the moment in the collegiate system, and they're getting great scores. In the UK, you've got myself, Lewis Church, and Elliot Thompson putting up big scores. I'm sorry. This is going to sound really mean and horrible, especially from someone that only scored 6,500 points themselves. But as a senior decathlete, 7,500 points is nothing. It's nowhere. It gets you nowhere. It does not qualify you for the Europeans. It doesn't qualify you for the Worlds. It doesn't qualify you for the Olympics. There are people in high school in America breaking that. I'm sorry. But as a senior man of 25 to 28 years old that should be at the peak of their career or approaching the peak of their career, 7,500 points does not qualify for you for anything. And it's only because the standard in this country is so poor that that's seen as a good score. Okay. It's sad and I want it to be better, but that's just essentially where we are. So decathlon combined events, do we have the right athletes? Are we getting the right grassroots programs? Do we have the right coaches? I've already talked about like the combined events lack or thereof of qualifications for combined events. Do we need to get into this team coaching? I personally don't think so, but it may seem like a solution, but it's so stunting the development opportunities for coaches to learn. Let's even think about that. If we are in a team of coaches and go, right, you're doing pole vault, you're doing hurdles, you're doing this, then you're just going to be quite happy in your role. And you as a coach are never going to go, well, hold on a minute, maybe I should learn a bit of pole vault, because you're like, no, that person's sorting it out, it's fine, they're dealing with it. And you feel happy that you've coordinated a system and you're actually developing yourself. Maybe if you're proactive, you're going to go, well, maybe I should watch and see what they're doing. But then that still doesn't, you still don't get qualified in it. You need to go through a proper educational system. Do we have the right learning environment? Combined events electives being drawn up, but how will combined event coaches learn from each other? There needs to be more workshops. There needs to be more talent days. There needs to be more regional coaching emporiums. It just needs to happen. And that's only going to come from the right support from EA coaching qualifications coming out like this combined events elective. It just needs to happen. Is all this stuff important? Absolutely. There's so many articles about early versus late specialization. We need to get the skills into these athletes at a younger age. It doesn't mean working them harder. It just means doing a range of skills. Are there any counterexamples to why we shouldn't specialize early? i.e., if you specialize early, are the success? Absolutely. I can name at least 3 fantastic ones. The Williams sisters started playing tennis at 4, 5, 6. Mondo Duplantis was pole vaulting as a 4 years old. Angelina Topic's parents were absolutely blasting her out at a young age, doing combined events and various other things, force settling on high jump. Yeah, of course, specializing early is going to be successful for some, and for others, it's going to lead to a burnout. I mean, when you look at these people, they had highly committed, talented people with a history of sport supporting them. being a pushy parent and just saying, yeah, just work harder. That's not gonna. You've got to train hard and smart, essentially. And I still feel that you need to have this idea from progressing from multi sports to multi events to then being specific. And that journey could take 5 years, it could take 10 years, it could take 15, it could be 20. But I look at Usain Bolt, and he clearly grew up with football, cricket, did a bunch of other stuff at school. That's his multi-sports journey. He then did a few events, different events while training as a youngster, 200, 400, 100, until he settled on his specialism, which is the ones and twos. And what I find really interesting is towards the back end of his career in 2016, they gave him a javelin to throw. And if I can get this to play, they gave him a javelin to throw just for a bit of banter, really. And his technique is so ropey, so unbelievably ropey. But because he'd probably spent ages as a kid throwing cricket balls and whatever as a youngster, I mean, look at this. Any javelin coach will think that's absolutely wonky. I mean, it's kind of there. There's no hip rotation. He just yeets it. There's no better word for it. He throws it. He still manages to throw that javelin 56 meters. And then you have decathletes in this country throwing 45 and 59, which is even worse or barely any better with specialist training. And you're telling me, oh, we don't have respect. My guy, Usain Bolt doesn't even train for it, and he's still yeeting it out mid 50s because he's an overall athlete. People look at these highly specified athletes and think like, oh, they can only do the 100. That's not true. Their pyramid has big base and then it's slowly tapered up to the top. I mean, there's so many other examples. You've got Kevin Mayer. He grew up with lots of different sports. His parents, Carol Andre, were both PE teachers. You know, they were educators in sport. He had a multi-sport background going to multi-events, and then he specialized in the decathlon. And his rap sheet is ridiculous. You can argue like, oh, well, you know, he's always injured, blah, 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 but he's done it where it counts. And to put it in perspective, he's nearly 300 points beyond Daley Thompson. And we could talk about Daley. I mean, he went to a boarding school where lots of different sports were happening. He came out of that wanting to be a professional footballer and training to be a sprinter. So you can kind of say that was starting to taper down into multiple events, one or two sports. And then it was and the rest is history. And then by fluke, you know, his coach was like, go on then, bit of banter, do decathlon. And then that became the thing. And and then a thing that not many people know is that Carsten Warholm was a European junior silver medalist for decathlon and a world youth gold medalist for octathlon. And you look at some of his scores at 17 and 19, and he was fast, don't get me wrong, but he could throw, he could jump, he could do everything. You don't become a world octathlon champion because you've got one or two good events. You have good all events. And again, he started playing football and doing various other sports. Age 7, that slowly tapered up into, you know, one or two sports or just multi events. And then finally he specialized into 4 hurdles. And, you know, when I look back at it, of course, as long as he's kept fit and healthy, of course that's going to be the case. And even Angelina Topic, you can say like, oh, well, she started at a young age, but yeah, she did a lot of different sports. She then tapered into indoor pentathlons. I think the decision must have been she wasn't that good at javelin, so maybe heptathlon wasn't for her. And then, you know, she has the national records for under 18 and under 20 pentathlon, but she's still going into high jump. And she's won world under 20, European under 18 and European under 20 championships. And she went to the Olympics. And the only reason she pulled out is because she broke her ankle. Like, she's a youngster going to the Olympics, fit and healthy. She's probably got another 2 Olympics in her, but such a good platform. Mondo Duplantis, sorry, not Mondo. Sorry, I looked at the Sweden. Simon Pettersson, silver medalist, discus thrower. And you're probably thinking like, what? Combined events, discus? What? No, aren't they just big guys? No, he went to Hasselby SK. They in Sweden they don't have athletic clubs. They have sports clubs, and they make you do a variety of different clubs. You can check out the interview I had with him: football, tennis, hockey, basketball, athletics. And he did a youth decathlon, and he scored 6,849 points as a 17-year-old. And then, then specialized in throwing, and then went to discus, and yeah, but you know, and you can look at the video of Zane Weir that we did. Like he played lots of different sports, rugby, football, and then slowly tapered in. And you look at Simon, you look at Zane, they are fit, athletic, explosive men. And they're just smashing it. All of these stories, there's success stories, and then there's a plethora of stories where it doesn't go so well. And appropriate challenge leads to optimal development.